tidigare patienter. Pojkar mellan 7 och 17 år som han fotograferat och haft sexuellt umgänge med. Allt ingick i vad åklagaren kallade 50 år av Barrys ohämmade, oupptäckta sexuella övergrepp mot barn. Detta är inte en enstaka händelse. Det är den väl dolda naturen hos medlemmarna av denna yrkeskår. I varje stad, varje delstat, varje land begår psykiatriker våldtäkt, sexuella övergrepp, mord och bedrägeri. Och som du ska få se vilar psykiatrins hela trovärdighet på det största bedrägeriet av alla.
I was diagnosed with a chemical imbalance, manic depression.
They diagnosed me with having ADD.
He told me I had conduct disorder,
ADHD,
mild depression,
Major depression.
manic depressive,
borderline personality disorder,
social anxiety,
Depression and schizophrenia.
Sleep disorder. Identity problems.
There's no such thing as mental disorder. A mental disorder is whatever someone says it is, and if the person saying this is a mental disorder has enough power and influence, then people believe, oh, that's a mental disorder.
Men man kan inte äga makt och inflytande utan trovärdighet. Så psykiatrin tillverkar sin egen.
It's based on a grab bag of checklists for disorders that are published in a book called the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. There are no statistics in this book, by the way. That just makes it sound more scientific.
They create this cluster of disease and they get together and they vote. Is this a disease? All in favor say aye.
It's marketed as a scientifically based document. Now, the American Psychiatric Association, which publishes the DSM, do a lot of work to create an aura of scientific precision around the DSM, but it's not scientifically based.
Sedan den första utgåvan av DSM har antalet mentala störningar som röstats in i psykiatrins diagnostikhandbok ökat till 374. Och med varje ny störning skapar psykiatrikerna ännu ett sätt att svindla allmänheten.
If you have 27 ways to bill in the DSM, that's 27 ways to bill. If you have 300, that's 300 ways to bill. So you can pretty much find anyone walking on the street that could fit into a DSM somehow.
When you build an insurance company, you can't say the word. You've got to send in a number. And they have numbers for the most ridiculous things. You know, like arguing with your mother or peeing in the bed.
Adolescent rebellion disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. Arithmetic learning disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. General anxiety disorder is a recent diagnosis.
For each one, there is a 5-digit code with a decimal point. Now, the implication of that is if I have illness 403.16, that's different in some important and scientifically proven way from someone who has 403.17. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Otroligt nog, även om DSM presenteras för världen som vetenskaplig sanning, medger psykiatriker öppet dess totala brist på vetenskaplighet.
We have no diagnostic reliable markers for almost any illness there is in the DSM.
What we're testing for in psychiatry, it's hard to say because there's nothing specifically.
But as far as a test that's clinically useful, basically we're not there yet.
We don't have any laboratory tests that we can use to determine whether somebody does or doesn't have a mental illness.
There are no good biological tests for detecting mental illness.
There is no test, there's no biopsy you can do.
There is no chemical test right now.
There are no specific tests to confirm the diagnosis or show the improvement, like any blood tests or any x-rays or anything like that.
Oh, in my practice I don't do any tests. I just speak with people and listen to them, and then I make a decision in what kind of illness.
Dessa diagnoser varierar lika mycket som de psykiatriker som ställer dem. Med denna dolda kamera besökte en person flera olika psykiatriker och klagade över samma symptom.
I'm extremely unorganized and I didn't used to be. It's caused problems in the family. It's caused problems getting, I'm self-employed.
So you've got ADD, ADHD, depressed, and your depression is bipolar depressed.
So you have a brain chemistry disorder and it's probably genetic.
You have a lot of the symptoms of depression.
So it seems like it is a mixed picture. What that means is like we got some depressive symptoms and some, high symptoms.
If you're bipolar, I'll need to give you a mood stabilizer. We don't know, I kind of doubt it. It's
considered low-grade bipolar.
You are more of the ADD than ADHD.
And as far as medications for depression, because I would recommend that you start a medication, which are Prozac, Zoloft, Paxil, Celexa.
Usually Focalin XR is pretty good.
I'll give you some Lexapro in the morning and some Trazodone at night.
Lamictal is a better medication for that. It works on your depression also.
But the treatment for any bipolar cycling is the same. The lithium,
Grandma is another one.
Trazodone,
Segradol,
Wellbutrin,
Lexapro,
Lamictal,
Equitroid,
Depakote,
lithium,
Ambien.
You may need an antidepressant also with your Lamictal.
We don't know if I give you a medication if it is going to work or not.
To a certain degree, it's trial and error.
You never know if it's the right drug.
How many people have I cured? Well, there are no real cures right now in psychiatry.
I have cured none of my patients.
We're always challenged by our lack of knowledge.
In fact, we don't know what the causes of mental illness are. Most mental illnesses, we do not know the cause.
Of course, it would be nice to know exact reasons of disorders, but maybe in the future.
I'm the Director of Research at the American Psychiatric Association. We don't know the etiology of really any of the mental disorders at the present time.
DSM-5 is coming out. It's grown to 10 times its original size, and it labels everybody. I could find 5 diagnoses that would fit you or anybody else.
Jämför detta med de forskningsmetoder som används inom patologi, en sann vetenskap som upptäcker faktiska sjukdomar genom en bred uppsättning exakta diagnostiseringsmetoder.
We do millions of laboratory tests as well as the structural examination and the microscopic examination. It's a whole series of applied scientific procedures. In the case of psychiatry, there isn't any laboratory tool that can precisely identify a psychiatric disease and allow it to be classified.
It's not as if there's some study of tissue or some study of the body or some study of matter. These are all categories which are made up. They're simply made up. They don't exist in nature. They're decided upon by psychiatrists and voted on.
Psykiatriker är inte de enda som drar nytta av DSM. Var helst man finner en psykiatrikers diagnos finner man också psykofarmaka.
The pharmaceutical corporations now contribute enormous sums of money for the education of psychiatric residents and for the support of research by their professors, so that psychiatry today has become in America, has become very largely learning of which drug to use with which disease or disorder.
We need to make sure that we understand the very close interactions among the American Psychiatric Association with its DSM, the pharmaceutical companies, who love the fact that every time there's a new edition of the DSM, there are dozens more categories in there, and so more conditions for the drug companies to say, oh, we've got a pill for that.
En undersökning gjord 2006 avslöjade att 56% av de psykiatriker som beslutade om vilka sjukdomar som skulle ingå i DSM hade finansiella förbindelser med åtminstone ett läkemedelsföretag. Idag ser vi resultaten, en störtflod av mediciner riktade mot påhittade sjukdomar som endast stöds av en godtycklig diagnos i DSM.
The fact that it is couched in the language of science without necessarily having any of the scientific data or underpinnings to justify it is as threatening as anything we've seen today.
Och psykiatrins senaste och mest kostsamma behandling för att lura allmänheten, hjärnskanning.
We can scan all the brains we want to. The fact that we see changes in different people's brains, changes in functioning, doesn't mean that we've discovered anything that has its origin in the brain. It just means that we're seeing changes, but it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the brain.
Psykiatriker och psykologer använder DSM för att diagnostisera 450 miljoner människor världen över som mentalt sjuka. Lika många som bor i Frankrike, Italien, Tyskland, Kanada, Australien, Storbritannien och Ryssland sammantaget. Samtidigt som försäljningen av psykofarmaka har stigit till 27 miljarder dollar per år har psykiatriker tagit emot sammanlagt 440 miljarder dollar från statliga anslag världen över för dessa patienter. Och en stor del av pengarna kommer från deras diagnostisering och medicinering av samhällets mest tillitsfulla och sårbara.
We have swallowed all manner of poisonous certainties fed us by our parents and school teachers. If the race is to be freed from its crippling burden of good and evil, it must be psychiatrists who take the original responsibility.
Brock Chisholms uttalande är ett exempel på psykiatrins angrepp riktat direkt mot vårt skolväsende.
They actually said the purpose was social control. Not to pass on knowledge. Not to give him something so that he can go into the world of work.
År 1950 mötte psykiatriker och psykologer från olika delar av världen i Vita huset för att föreslå en helt ny inriktning för det allmänna skolväsendet.
The White House Conference on Mental Health in the 1950s was a landmark that served to bolster the idea that schools would serve their communities better as mental health clinics than they would as institutions of learning.
In the early 60s, the world of psychiatry started to really go places in this country. Little by little, it came into our schools, our educational system.
År 1965 blev det lag. Psykiatriker fick grönt ljus för massklassificering och massdrogning av skolbarn.
A child is labeled ADD or ADHD the minute he can't sit still for a 10-15 minute period of time, or he talks constantly or ignores the teacher completely. That will get him and earn him an ADD or ADHD label.
Diagnosen uppmärksamhetsstörning med hyperaktivitet, ADHD, kom i fullt bruk 1987. På ett enda år fick 500 000 amerikanska barn diagnosen ADHD. 1994 hade antalet ökat till 4,4 miljoner. På grund av den allmänna oron för denna uppenbara epidemi av psykisk sjukdom samlade USAs National Institute of Health en panel med framstående läkare och psykiatriker för att förklara för föräldrar och lärare exakt vad ADHD var.
I would like any member of the panel to describe a typical ADHD in terms of symptomatology. Mark, would you like to, since you see them in your practice?
I mean, I think the panel has been frank, and you know, the difficulties here are immense in terms of these. I mean, it is hard. It's very hard to know how to answer this question. They cannot, you know, even when they are as if driven by a motive. There are some good clinical descriptions. And I think, you know, I think the part of the problem is the profession keeps changing the diagnosis.
At this time, we do not have a diagnostic test for ADHD. Therefore, the validity of the disorder continues to be a problem.
Detta chockerande erkännande stoppade dem dock inte. 2 år senare hade antalet amerikaner